heroes' feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green.
On November 30th, 1874, my wife gave birth to our first son, Winston. My name is Lord Randolph Churchill, and I am Winston Churchill's father. You may read that my son is half American. That is not true. Though his mother was an American, Winston was born as British as they come. He was descended under the first Duke of Marlborough. He was born at the height of Britain's empire, under the reign of Queen Victoria. God save her. Why, the boy even dreamed like a Brit, hoping to one day go to battle for the empire. Make no mistake, Winston was 100% British and 100% Churchill. That's not to say that my son and I always got along. He was disorderly at school and would hide from his governess to avoid his daily lessons. He put no value on his education. Yes, he loved to read, but not when anyone told him to read. I'll have you know, his father was a man that took his education very seriously. I would look forward to my boarding school. Winston would count the days till he got to return home. He traded schoolwork for playing soldier. He traded diligent studies for lofty dreams. For years, teachers would call him a stubborn troublemaker until he finally enrolled in the Royal Military Academy at age 18. All those years, we barely spoke, and the question of whether I loved him or not never came up. But I knew this. He respected me. His favorite book was Treasure Island, the one that I gave him. I may not have known how to love Winston, but he was my son, and you can be damn sure I was proud of him.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the world.
Teddy Roosevelt, 26th President of these United States. Shut up! This is America. I met Winston Churchill when we were on a mission together in Cuba, and I'll say this, the man was not shy of arrogant. Every man that would speak to him would hear his tales of being ambushed by the Dervish army in Sudan and then having to fend them off in hand-to-hand combat. And that British Empire that he talked about. Don't get me wrong, I'm a man that respects the soldier of any nation. But when we are trying to sleep, Mr. Churchill, we'd rather not hear about that. Why, the man was so dedicated at some times, he seemed insane. Once, when he came upon a battle in which a train had been derailed, Churchill found the engineer lying beneath the wreckage. And you know what he did? He lectured the man on his duty to his position. Who the hell cares about duty? But for all that aggravated me about the man, he was one of the bravest I ever knew. After he pulled that engineer from the wreckage, he found himself facing the enemy with no pistol at his side. Churchill was captured and kept as a prisoner of war for weeks, but he never gave up hope. With the help of God and his own courage, Churchill escaped, returning to England, where he would be awarded 37 medals, decorations, and honors. When asked about his future, Churchill once said, "I believe we are all worms, but I am a glowworm." I may not have liked the man, but I agree with him.
God save our gracious Queen.
My friends call me Ronald, and you're welcome to do so as well. But the name I'm most known by is my pen name, J.R.R. Tolkien. Like me, Winston Churchill was a prolific writer, a staunch believer in Christ, and an early opposer to the Nazis. But I remember Winston Churchill just as any other good Englishman should, as history's greatest prime minister. But it wasn't always this way. Churchill entered politics around 1900, and was immediately greeted with an overwhelming scorn by just about everyone who disagreed with him. In fact, one political party in particular very much disliked him. For Churchill was a staunch opposer to the Nazis very early in their rise. And after Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's failed appeasement with Hitler didn't work, Britons took notice of Churchill, and he was appointed Prime Minister. I'd say that in all of history, there have been but few better decisions made by a government. I remember the bombings in London. I remember everyone was afraid. But our Prime Minister, he gave us hope. We'd see him as he walked about the city, helping those he could, weeping at the destruction. He was a strong man, and even Hitler knew it. It reminds me of their first meeting together. Churchill was in a cafe in Germany set to meet the leader of the Nazi Party. Hitler arrived and looked through the glass cafe windows, and for a second caught the stare of Churchill. Adolf Hitler, leader of the darkest, most powerful threat to Western civilization, refused to enter that cafe. You know, at the end of Arthurian legend, King Arthur pledges that one day, when Britain needed him most, a hero like him would rise to save them. Now, many say that this is just a fairy tale, but I am a man who believes that fairy tales often contain a lot of truth.
I was born the second child and only son of Winston Churchill. He named me after a man he respected with all of his being, his father. My name is Randolph Churchill, and my father saved the world. I was 33 when the Allied forces invaded Normandy on D-Day. I, along with my family and countrymen, rejoiced that our forces drove the Nazis away from our Isle home. I also rejoiced because my father was in England at the time of the invasion. You see, when my father, aged 70 at the time, first heard of the Allies' plans to invade, he insisted that he go with the troops. And damn his stubbornness, he would have, had it not been for the king's careful persuasion. 1 year later, the towering evil of the Axis powers fell. The greatest struggle of my father's life was over. The Second World War had come to an end. It was said, had it not been for my father's genius and stubbornness, all would have been lost. I consider myself blessed. Not all sons can say that their fathers rescued Western civilization. After the war was over, my father continued to fight other battles. In 1946, he delivered his famed Iron Curtain speech. Ever the great speaker and political prophet, my father warned against another encroaching danger, that of communism and the Soviet Union. In 1964, my father retired from politics, and in 1965, at the age of 90, my father suffered a severe stroke. After laying in a coma for several days, my father slipped away on January 24th. What died that day was a man, but Winston Churchill, stubborn Winston, the fighter Winston, that bastard Churchill, is still alive. His legacy lives on in schools named after him, in his literary works which are still published to this day, and in the small things, like the 7x47 Julietta cigar, which is commonly dubbed a Churchill. But even more so than his namesakes, my father's legacy will live on in the courage of the world. For wherever democracy is threatened, wherever the wicked receive justice for their wrongs, wherever the good is protected, my father's words will be remembered. In June of 1940, at the outset of the battle against Hitler, my father said, "If we fail, then the whole world, including all that we have loved, will sink into the dark abyss of a sinister force unknown before man. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth will last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour."